Regie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This is the Comics to Go show. Despite what that header said, this is Comics Today, and we are going to spend some time talking about new comics and comics in general. We're going to celebrate New Comic Book Day, and as a reminder, what you are watching right now on the YouTube machine will actually be available. It will be rebroadcast on the podcast, which is available on several different platforms out there, including Podbean, which is our preferred. But this is a show that we do every single week on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And that time will probably change when I make my way finally to the East Coast, and it looks like that move is going to happen around the 25th of this month. So we are getting very, very close. During this show, we are going to take some time to talk about a thing that has been on my mind since Sunday show. Literally, as Sunday show wrapped up, I had a thought about something, and I held off until Monday to make sure that it was a real idea. And then I ended up messaging a couple of people to kind of noodle it a little bit more. But tonight we are going to be talking about comic book hot list. And the question is, are hot lists still needed? Are they useful? And if so, by whom? That is essentially the gist of what we're going to talk about. And as I mentioned, I reached out to a few folks that are going to come on the show tonight to chat with me a little bit about that topic. And as we normally do during this show, because it is a celebration of New Comic Book Day, I like to go to the chat. And I like to have people that are in the live chat, in the live stream right now, to let us know what books they may have picked up at their LCS. And if they read something that is worth putting on the top of our respective stacks, I want people to shout those things out so that we can definitely make that adjustment. And I'm looking around here in the room trying to find my own stack of books, which I just realized is not in this room. So I did pick up a couple of books, and I'll probably mention some of what I picked up, but I am going to be going to the chat here momentarily to see if people did indeed pick some things up. There was a couple of really cool things. That came out today. And so we're definitely going to hopefully have some folks shout those things out here in the room. Kind of glancing at the chat here right now. Doug is in here saying that Dave and I didn't hit the LCS today, but they snagged a lot of back issues. That still counts, my man. That still counts. Scrolling through, L. Smith only had to use 2 Comics to Go boxes this week to pick up. So here's the thing, L. Smith. How many boxes do you normally use, bro? If you only use 2, only use 2 this week, how many do you use? But he picked up Batman Urban Legends issue number 3, Children of the Atom, Conan, Star Wars High Republic, X Corp number 1. That is what's up. And I want to grab my note because I have to give a shout out. Thank you for that reminder. I am so unprepared for tonight's show. And he picked up some other things. I can tell you right now that what you picked up so far that you mentioned, that's not enough to fill 1 Comics to Go box. So I have a feeling you picked up a lot more stuff than that. Mark Andrews, how you doing, brother? He says he picked up Time Before Time, issue number 1, Geiger, Carmen, Conan, Firefly, Newverse, Rorschach, and Batman Detective issue number 2. That's what's up. Tony Trubetta, how you doing, brother? It's good to see you. Recount number 4, Geiger. That's what's up. Good stuff. Good stuff. Who was that? I just saw a name that I have not seen in a while. Oh, it's Deuces. How you doing, brother? It's good to see you. Scrolling through some of the comments here, seeing what else. Ed says he does not have an LCS. That is rough, brother. That is rough. Definitely, there are some parts of the country where there are black holes, no doubt about that. But usually 3. There we go. we got our answer from L. Smith, who does have an LCS, and I'm assuming an LCS owner that absolutely loves to see L. Smith come in with his 3 Comics to Go boxes. Scrolling through, Mass Snow, how you doing, brother? He says he picked up from his LCS, early Star Wars run from the 70s. That's what's up. That does still count. It's still, you know why it counts? It counts because you went to an LCS and you spent some money. That's why it counts. Anything that supports LCSs actually counts in my book. Scrolling through, you can get exactly Matt Woods. He named like 5 books, and he's like, I used 2 comics to go, but he named 5 books. There's a lot of books that are missing from that list. Scrolling through, Greg says he picked up 18 from his pull list. Woof, that's beast mode right there. Scrolling through some of the comments here, see what else you guys are talking about. K Solo, what is that? KJ Solo picked up some back issues of Miles Morales. Very good, very good. Almighty Liger King is up in the house. He picked up Geiger 2, Children of the Atom 3, Joker, Time Before, it got away from me. Time Before Time. That's a book I never heard of before. It seems a couple of people have picked that up. Scouts, Honor, and more. That's what's up. Good stuff, brother. Scrolling through, always take a short. Jeremy, are you married? Because, bro, if I walk in and out of this house with a short box every time I go to the LCS, I don't know about that one. No, good stuff. Scrolling through some of the comments here. All right, a couple of people picked up some good stuff. That's what's up. DC Festival of Heroes. Love the Monkey Prince, says Thomas Mayo. It's good to see you, my friend. Good chat the other day. Ryan says that there is a gas shortage in North Carolina. Yeah, man, there is a gas shortage, and it's incredible. What's incredible is that someone posted up a photo earlier today on the Instagram machine, because I love Instagram. And in this photo, there was a woman that was filling up one of those Rubbermaid totes. She was filling up a Rubbermaid tote at the gas station. She had the Rubbermaid tote on the ground, and she had about 5 inches of gas in this Rubbermaid tote. And my big question, if I were there with her, I would have been like, how do you intend to get that Rubbermaid tote off of the ground and into the trunk of your car? And what precautions are you going to take to prevent that gas from sloshing around in the trunk of your car? It just, there is a gas shortage like there was a toilet paper shortage at the beginning of the pandemic. There are some things I just don't understand. it. But we won't be there technically until what is it, the 25th or something like that. And I'm getting a rental car initially, so that should come with a tank full of gas and get me everywhere I need to go. And I maybe will get that option of return it on empty. That might be the option for me, just because of some of that stuff. There you go. People are crazy when they're panicked for nothing. I'm telling you, man, there are some things that I just don't understand. 1 gallon. Oh, I did not. Oh, yeah. 1 gallon is equal 8.8 pounds. I used to carry a gallon of water around everywhere I went. So I do know that fact. So that's what's up. Scrolling through some of the comments, there's a common sense shortage. I'm not going to disagree with you at all. Danny Girl picked up Kanto, 7 Secrets, Geiger, Spider Shadow, Star Wars, High Republic. People love some Star Wars High Republic. That's what's up. That pipeline is spiking. Supposedly they're going to be getting the pipeline back up and running. So I wasn't sure whether you guys, I haven't seen it yet. But I had a couple of people make some comments to me earlier today about eBay making some changes to like their search algorithm or something like that, and along with some other changes. I'm not sure if anybody has experienced any of that stuff, but I assume that there were going to be a couple of questions or comments kind of thrown out about that, but I have not yet seen that. So I don't know if you guys have experienced that. Scrolling through some of the comments here, who is that? Milt, I am not going to read that comment, brother. Don't get me in trouble. Don't get me in trouble with the politics. Scrolling through some of the comments here. Steve, how you doing, brother? He's making a comment here. Please be careful. Got his PayPal hacked. That is ungood. That is ungood right there. Scrolling through some of the comments here is Diamond. Oh, come on, man. Come on. Why? Pretty Fly, why are you jamming Diamond up? Come on, you know they do better than that. If it was, what is that other distribution company, one for DC? If it were them, they'd just show up like 3 days late. That, it still show up, but it'd be like 3 days late with the gas. All right, so there's a comment here. Picked up Proctor Valley variant, Eros. What is that? Silver Coin 2. I don't recognize. Oh, Ice Cream Man. I do recognize that. And Department of Truth, fifth print. Wow, that's crazy. I guess Time Before Time was one of the other ones that you picked up. A couple of cool books and a couple that I do not recognize at all. So what is? All right, cool. So, oh, there was a question here about that. I have, and I'll be honest with you, I don't quite know what to think of this show just yet. I don't know what to think of it just yet. I think I've watched like 3 episodes of it. Um, it's not compelling like anything that Marvel has done, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible. But it's not great either. It's like somewhere in between of like, I have some free time, so I'm going to kill it watching this. But as soon as something more important comes up, I am turning this off and I'm walking in the other room, or maybe not even turn it off. I just get up and walk out. That is my general feeling about that one right now. So I have no background on the characters at all. So I don't know quite what to make of it. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, I want to chat a little bit about comic book hot list. And for those that don't know what a hot list is, or have some confusion in their mind as to what it is, it is essentially a list of comics that might be comics that are hot for some reason or another, or might potentially get hot, that maybe are changing hands pretty often, that have the potential to go up in value because of something that might actually get revealed. These hot lists essentially provide people with insight into what is happening or what potentially will happen so that they can do something with that information. Some people go out and buy the comics because they're hot. Some people go looking for them in their collection. Some people sell them as soon as they get hot. There's a lot of ways I think that hot lists can be one, generated, and then one, leveraged. And one of the things that kind of popped into my mind is, are these hot lists still relevant, right? Are they still relevant? Are they still helpful? And if so, like how, right? And it's important for me to also to mention that this discussion that we are about to have is in no way, shape, or form a criticism of anyone that creates hot lists, whether they be in written format or creates videos that are hot lists. This is not a criticism of any of those people, any of those YouTubers, any of those organizations that produce it. It is more of a discussion that I want to have because this popped into my head. And it kind of popped into my head because, right now, you can almost pick any book and say that this book is going to get hot. And you can do that because just about every book is hot. Almost every book is going up in value by and large. If it's a popular book associated with a popular character in some way, shape, or form, you can say, hey, here is a book that has some potential. And then sure enough, it actually may go up. And so the question again is, if these hot lists were intended to give you some kind of leading indicator or to give you some kind of sign that this book has some potential, if everything is going up in value, do we still need these hot lists? Are they still as relevant as they once were? That is essentially the questions. Well, I should say, those are the questions that actually popped into my mind. And so I have 2 guests waiting in the green room. We're going to bring one on right now, and I have a question for him, and then we're going to get to our second guest a little bit later. So bear with me on that. And Matt actually guessed who this guest was going to be, and I don't think it's too hard to guess who the guest is going to be because I like this guy, and so I enjoy talking to him. Doug, it is good to see you.
Hey, Reggie, great to see you again.
I want to take that banner off of your forehead. So you were in the green room. You heard some of the stuff that I teed up. The first question that I have for you is, are hot lists dead?
You always ask such great questions, and I feel like this one is really loaded because it can mean different things. It's, do people still need them because the market's, kind of going nuts on its own? Are there enough other market drivers out there that they're irrelevant or unnecessary? And are they creating too much hype at times around certain books? So there's a lot of different ways to look at the question. I'll say generally, and we can dive into the specifics. I do think they serve an important function. for different types of collectors and in very different ways for the very different kinds of collectors that are out there. And we can chat a little bit about what those are. I also do think at times they create, or not that they create problems, but how consumers who watch or read those hot lists can have problems because of the way they interpret what they're taking in.
Yep. Because at the end of the day, like a content creator, whether it's somebody that is generating a list or recording a video, they are putting this content out there because it has some value, but they don't necessarily control how someone interprets it. And I mean, even if you put tons of different caveats around it and you're like, here's how it should be used, people are still free to use it and to think about it the way that they want to. And so I think that there is some room there for people to maybe misconstrue and to maybe get themselves in some trouble. And we'll maybe talk about that as the course of this conversation goes. But what I essentially heard you say in response to my initial question around them being dead was no, they're not dead. They are still relevant in several different ways, depending upon who is watching them, whether they're, I'm guessing, a collector, a speculator, a reader. Like, break it down for me where you have drawn the lines and what benefit you see for those different groups of folks that you've carved out.
So you hit a couple right off the bat. The first I'm going to take is just the reader, or the person who just collects purely for the joy and the fun, what they like, what covers they think are great, and not necessarily the collector that's focused on the dollars and cents so much. And I think where hot lists can be extremely helpful and relevant to that type of collector is, in a way, highlighting for them, especially with newer books coming out, what books they need to either put on a pull list or contact their LCS and see if they can reserve a copy. There are many collectors like myself who I don't have a lot of series on a regular pull list, just like one or two. But I like to buy new comics as they come out, depending on a lot of different things. So if I am aware that there's a lot of hype or a lot of interest around a specific book for a specific reason, that gives me a heads up that instead of being frustrated because I got there, 3 hours after the shop opened and I couldn't get the book I wanted, it gives me that cue that, hey, I need to be proactive about this. If I really want that book, and I need to reach out to my LCS in advance, see if they can pull it for me.
So what I just heard there was, like, for readers or casual collectors, whatever it happens to be, the general awareness of something happening, there is some value there so that they can at least get a copy and not be too late to the party.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep. I think then for those who are more focused on either the speculative or investment potential side of the hobby, I think that hot lists provide a way for the community to understand some of the drivers in the market of demand.
Okay.
And I don't think all hot lists are created equal. Obviously, there are some that are very data focused, some that are incredibly well researched on back issues, looking at first appearances, what's going on with movie and television streaming shows, and why certain characters and certain comics, are something that people might want to get in their collection before the values jump up. So I think that information, if you use it as such, that can be really helpful. It can help teach people about speculating and investing. It doesn't mean that you're always going to make wise choices around that. And I think that's where we get into some of the problematic side that we can talk about. But the one other way that I think they are relevant, and I think this is an interesting one, that I think from a historical perspective, which it's hard to look at now because we're in it. But in comics, we look at eras of comics in hindsight, and we define it by certain things. And I do feel very strongly that the YouTube and Instagram community is playing a defining role in an era of comics that we won't truly define until we're 10 years down the road and looking back at it. But you and I have had this conversation. I do not like the 30-year modern designation. I think there are some really thoughtful ways to break that up. And I do think we're in a very unique era right now. And I think this community, and hot lists are a part of it. They're not the sole piece of it. But the online communities that have developed are a really unique factor in the current era of collecting and in marketing of comics. So because of that, I also, again, I don't want to knock anything. There's great lists. There's probably some that are better than others, some that are more data-based and more well-researched. But I do think that 10 years down the road, when we look back at this era, this is an important part of it.
Very good. I was trying to mute myself there because my children are crying in the background. And so
it's not Bentley tonight.
It is not Bentley. It is Carter and Adeline. That's who is going at it in the outer room. So your dog definitely is safe from this one. So one of the things that you kind of alluded to is that there are different types of quality hot lists that are put out there, right? And in my head, there's like a spectrum, right? There is the data and insights derived type of hot list, and then there is like the pure like rumor, and I heard through the grapevine that this thing was going to happen. Somebody whispered it to me in the hallways. How does somebody know where a hot list falls on that spectrum? Because I don't know if all hot lists are transparent as to where all the information comes from. So how does one go about either becoming aware of where the data is derived from, or how do they protect themselves against data or against a hot list that may not be rooted in hardcore data?
So I think that part of it is just listening and using critical thinking skills. If a hot list is very transparent and says, hey, we're getting this from this source, whether it is, sales data that, Go Collect is gathering, or eBay sales, or, from, this online, like CBSI, or someone has a lot of thoughtful individuals as a community working to gather data. I think that's the first step, is actually listening to see, do they actually talk about, where they're sourcing this from. I think the second thing is, I actually am a fan of and enjoy some of the speculative side of hot lists and trying to figure out the next big comics. I do it myself. I occasionally write blog posts in that vein on regiecollects.com. So I enjoy that, but I think that's where the critical thinking skills come in. If someone's just like, this is a huge book, this is going to be great because it has a first appearance, you've got to get it. That's like a really basic level. It's, well, why is that character relevant? Yep. What is making them interesting and unique? What's making them a character that if they do pop up in a streaming show or a movie, is going to make a fan base actually connect with them and want to learn more about that character than just, hey, they showed up for 3 minutes in a movie that everybody forgets about in a year. So and I really do think it just goes back to, when you watch, don't just like, garbage in, garbage out. You hear something and you run out and buy. And I think that's where we start to get into the importance of the individual processing the hot list and the information they're getting, rather than just the content. Yep. Because I really do feel that there's a great education to be had out there by watching some of these more thoughtful ones that help you understand market factors more, that help you learn about what's going on in the industry, why certain books, you know, rise in value at certain times, when are good times to purchase or sell books. And I find that very valuable. I've learned a lot from that. But on the flip side, there's also the ability for it to teach you not to think also. If you just want to like watch something and whatever you're told is hot, run out because of FOMO and buy it at any price, that's, you know, that's not as smart.
It seems dangerous, right? I mean, and I don't think that there's anything wrong, and this is certainly not what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with watching this stuff or reading this stuff for the purpose of entertainment. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that entertainment is prompting you to spend money willy-nilly without actually thinking about it, then that's where it becomes a problem. But ultimately, what I heard you say there is that the best defense, if you will, is to take the stuff in and to digest it, to think through and to scrutinize the rationale and the argument that someone is making for what they are saying, and evaluate for yourself whether that rationale holds water and if it's something that you personally want to take action on, right? Because I mean, there's some writers out there that will write some stuff that will make you feel like if you don't do it literally this moment, there is a problem. But that's because they're good writers. But that doesn't mean that that guidance is right for the individual. And that's where the individual has to take that responsibility and ask themselves some tough questions. Does this make sense? Does this make sense for me? Is this something that I need to do right now? Or are there other things that I should, do? So one of the questions I have for you, and then I'm actually going to get to our next guest here, and I'm going to bring you back because I want to dig into a little bit more of this. One of the things that there are some lists out there that are generated from transactions, like sheer volume of books trading hands. Given that there are more people coming into the comic book market, given that there are things that you have given to me recently that show that people are flipping books, even high dollar books. If we're looking at lists that are based upon sales and books trading hands, given that the volume has increased, how relevant, again, is a hot list that is derived from that type of data? Yes, it's data, but it's data about things changing hands without knowing that it might be the same thing that's changing hands, and it might not also reflect that there's more people coming into the hobby. What are your thoughts on that?
I think all data is good to have just to help you process it, but that's the important thing. It's, the number of sales might not be an indicator that it's the time to buy. It might be an indicator it's time to sell. And you've got to make that decision for yourself. So like, I think prices actualized is interesting data. I think, volume is interesting, but you can't just look at it like, oh, this book is selling a lot, so I must buy a copy right now. I think there's almost, you can look at it when you see a hot list or you see information like that, there's kind of the what, the why, and the how. The what is just, well, I'm just listening and hearing it's a hot book and everybody's buying it, so I think I've got to buy it, when that might not be the best way to go. The why is, okay, why is this changing hands so much? Why is the price going up? And what makes sense for me right now? Should I buy, or is this red ocean and should I hold off because a couple years down the road it won't be? So that's the why. And I think the how is that kind of advanced level. Like when you really start to use those critical thinking skills, it's like, okay, how is this market influencing things that are going to happen, not necessarily with this book that I'm hearing about, but with other books down the road? I saw this with, I was talking with my brother Dave about this, the television show Invincible on Netflix, which I think is wonderful. all the appearances in season 1 are popping up in Key Collector, and everybody's going out and buying them. And my brother was a big fan of Invincible. I said, Dave, like, go through it sometime. Tell me important characters that weren't in season 1, that might be in season 2 or 3, which were already greenlit, that aren't in Key Collector. That's what I want to know about, because
Blue Ocean. That's called the Blue Ocean.
Exactly.
I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about. Everybody's paying attention to season 1 and what's hot right now. What about everything else? That's where I get excited. Sorry. Finish your thought. Finish your Dave Doug comment there.
But that's it. That's the how. It's if you understand these things are getting popular when people see them on television, you don't have to buy then. You can say, well, they're going to have a season 2 and season 3. Netflix already announced it. They're greenlit. Yep. So why don't I do a little digging myself, learn a little bit about it, and go buy that book for $5 or $10 now, rather than waiting till they make an announcement and paying $50 or $100.
I mean, you wrote that blog post about the Captain America books, the first appearance of Falcon, which I did not get, but then Falcon's second appearance was like super cheap. I bought like 2 of them because they were giving them away, right? And I still participate in it, but it's like you have to think beyond what might be on that hot list to what's not on that hot list, but has some potential as well. So I love that point. Were you about to say something else? Oh, go ahead, make your point, and then I'm gonna regroup. I
just wanted to say credit where credit's due. I think that was the Doug from Go Collect who wrote that.
Oh, yeah. Was it Doug?
I just don't want to take credit for somebody else's work.
I see Doug and I automatically think it's you all the time. I'm like, Doug did it. Anyway, you still get credit for some great blog posts, my friend. So I'm gonna take you off the screen, and I'm gonna be back with you in a second. For those folks that might be coming in a little bit late, we are having a conversation about hot lists and whether hot lists are still relevant, and if so, how can they be used in this day and age where everything is actually going up in value? So we just finished talking to Doug for a few moments, and we're going to bring him back on. But I actually want to bring on my next guest here, Neo. It is good to see you, my friend. Thank you for waiting patiently behind the scenes. How are you doing?
Regie, what's going on? I'm doing great.
I have 0 complaints, my friend. I completed the transaction to buy my house yesterday. I sent a wire that almost made me cry, but I'm recovering today. I'm feeling better today. So
I can't imagine what that experience must be like in these times.
brother, you talk about red ocean. You don't want any part of this one. So here, I want to show you something here on screen, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about what I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions in general, right? And so as a reminder, yes, we are talking about hot lists, but we are not criticizing any YouTuber or content creator that produces a hot list. We are having a conversation. That's what we're talking about. It is not a criticism. And I mention this because I actually stole this from somebody that produces a hot list, and it's not my intent to criticize them in case people make the connection between what I'm showing. But this is a meme that came up yesterday. I came up with this idea on Sunday. This came up in my feed on the Instagram yesterday. It says, when you're the first one to break new comic spec and it pays off, I am the smartest man alive. And as someone that has broken some news occasionally, I do feel like I'm the smartest man alive. But right now, you can pick any book, and generally that book is going to perform well. What are your thoughts on whether hot lists are dead or whether they still have some relevance right now?
I agree with a lot of the stuff that Doug said. As a content creator myself, I do think there's definitely still a place for them. We may look at it like, is there really a need for this? Because we're doing this every day. Like if you're talking about comic books, sports cards, whatever, you have your finger on the pulse of whatever it is that's going on in the market, whether it's sales or spec, rumors, news, whatever. But your audience could be someone that they might check in once or twice a week, maybe every couple weeks. They fire up YouTube and say, okay, let me click on the couple content creators that I follow and kind of see what's going on out in this wide world of, in this case, the comic book market, or, speculation / hot list, like what's going on out there. And then they go, okay, cool, and go back to whatever it is that they do. And then they come back 2 weeks later. So for someone like that, that information could be extremely helpful.
Mhm.
For someone like me and you that's following this every minute, we might look at it and go, well, duh.
Like, where's the news in this? I already knew this because 20 people sent me the message. I mean, you actually raise a good point. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, for those that do not know you, Rob, is that you are a YouTuber, but primarily with sports cards, and you dabble a little bit in comics, and you have I think a really interesting perspective just in general, which is why I wanted you on. And I think it's important for people to hear the perspective. But if I boil it down, what I'm hearing you say is that hot lists still serve a purpose, and they serve a purpose of, to Doug's point and your point, of driving awareness and helping people to understand maybe what's popular, what might be going up in value, that there is still some value there for maybe that casual observer, and possibly even others that might miss the news just because they're not looking at this stuff every single day, all day. And they don't have people like, that like me that get messages all the time. So is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, 100%. And like, just speaking on myself, like I do follow both the sports card and the comic book market extremely closely. And I still find a lot of value in watching a lot of other content creators, quote unquote, hot lists, whether it's sports cards or comic books, because it gives me a different perspective and takes me out of potentially an echo chamber that I might be in, whether it's, a particular Discord that I hang out in, or just my own personal thoughts, or the friends / connections I've made in whatever hobby it is that we're talking about. You start bouncing ideas off of each other, and you do form that echo chamber where we're all saying like, oh yeah, we all need to get on whatever it is, or this looks like, something that's potentially undervalued. And you go outside your bubble and you want to take in as much information as you can, because someone might bring up a good point that you either ignored or didn't put enough thought into. So even though I follow this stuff, what I would consider fairly regularly, I still find some value in a lot of that information that gets put out there that, at a baseline level, I may find as quote unquote obvious. It's still interesting to hear not just what's on the list, but either why they're putting it on the list, or maybe their list is just different than mine or someone else's.
And that's to the point that Doug made around this idea of you can't just take it in. You have to like scrutinize it a little bit, and you have to take that step back and what are they really saying? What is the rationale? What is the argument that is being made here? And what I'm hearing you say is that you actually find value in that alternative perspective, that alternative viewpoint, maybe facts and data that you weren't privy to or did not consider. There's some value in there. Do you think that and I know this is hard, it's a hard question for me to ask, and it might be a hard question for you to answer. Do you think that most people are scrutinizing it the way that you are, or are people watching it and taking action? Because that leads to another question, right? Are they watching it and hitting the buy button right on the eBays? Like, honestly, what's your thought about that?
It's both. I mean, it's for sure both, but I know it's the latter. I mean, I'm sure you would probably agree with this, as I think we talked about this before offline. I think our response to a lot of different questions is, did you do your homework on this or do your own research on this? And a lot of people don't want that. They want to be told, or they want an out if it goes sideways. They could kind of say, well, yeah, I bought it, but Regie and Rob told me this was potentially something I should go get. I really wasn't going to get it, but they said so. So it's kind of their fault that it went down or it didn't pan out or whatever. People don't want to take, I shouldn't say not all people. There's a segment that doesn't want to take the responsibility of making a purchase or selling. This could go either way. Should I sell something right now, or should I buy something right now? They want to push that decision off on someone else. They just don't want to make a decision on their own. And I think as any content creator, regardless of what you're doing, hot list or not, I think there is a little bit of like, with great power comes great responsibility type thing. And I feel like anyone that's sat behind the microphone or the camera has probably had that moment early on where you kind of don't realize that you have that ability.
Yeah.
And I remember one time talking about a sports card. This was very early on in my channel. It was not that large, and I had it on an eBay watch list, like 8 copies of it, and I like off mentioned it on a video. And then later that morning, I noticed that all of them had sold. Now, I don't know that I did that. I have no idea. But in my head, ever since that moment, I immediately thought, like, okay, like you need to really think about what you're putting out there if I'm doing any sort of, this is undervalued, or I think this is kind of cheap type stuff. I personally typically try to stay away from specific things as much as possible, but it's hard to do. I mean, it's hard to do.
What was the feeling that you had? What was that moment when you realized that you possibly sold a bunch of stuff? Like, what went through your mind?
It was a lot of things. It was like, was that me? And then it was kind of like a semi-random thing. So it would just be kind of random that like all of a sudden, like all 6 of them would sell in the same time frame, basically.
Yep.
It was this strange feeling, and it definitely made me think more about not being careful, but just walking a line.
Yeah.
It
freaked me out. I'll be completely honest, because I've done it, and I'm like, what just happened? And it scared me. It scared me
100%.
And I've said for a long time, long before this YouTube thing, don't ever start a sentence with Regie said. I just say, like, I've said that for a long time. Don't ever start it, because, I try to do the best that I possibly can, right? But I'm just a person. And as a person, I get stuff wrong. So I never want anybody buying something because I said to buy it. What I will do is, and I oftentimes say this in videos, I will give you some things to think about and to consider. And then you have to decide what's in your best interest. But you probably get this as well. The question comes in, I can buy this or that. Which one should I buy? I could sell this. Should I sell it? Yes or no? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to be on the hook for that. But let's talk about it, and I'll tell you how I think about these things and make these decisions. But it's a very tough, precarious situation to be in. And the question is, and I don't know this, I wonder if the people that generate the hot list think that way. You would imagine that they do. You would imagine that they have some kind of responsibility for that, right?
You would hope so. I don't know that everyone does. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there doing nefarious things with them, and they know that they're doing nefarious things with them and just don't care, because that's the world that we live in. But I think there are plenty of people that know what they say can cause people to make decisions that they might not normally make, and they try to be more responsible with that. I tend to be like what Doug was talking about, whether it's sports cards or comic books, I tend to be more data driven and quote unquote show the work, versus just saying like, here's the 5 things, like here's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. You better go right now.
Yeah.
So, and going back to your earlier point, you said, don't ever say Regie says. One of the things that I always revert to is I always say, I'm just a guy sitting in my basement. I just happen to have a fancy microphone. That's the only difference between me and you.
I normally say a microphone and a good smile. That's normally mine, but it's like you have to say something like that, because we are just people, right? I mean, neither one of us, I don't think, is doing this full time, but neither one of us is trying to do anything nefarious. Neither one of us is trying to jam somebody up, right? That is not the goal. No. You know what I'm saying? But to the point that we were making earlier, there is potentially a segment of people out there that are watching hot lists, reading hot lists, getting alerts, whatever it happens to be, and they are immediately taking some kind of action as a result of that. They are not necessarily scrutinizing the data, scrutinizing the rationale. They are just acting. FOMO has them. How much of that do you think could be attributed to like the crazy prices that we are seeing right now, right? The FOMO factor that comes from just rampant speculation. And Doug, I'm going to be coming to you momentarily with the exact same question. I see you nodding. All right, Rob, what is your thought? How much of that do you think is contributing to the rampant speculation and price spikes that we are seeing?
I think it definitely helps it. You're feeding the fire at that point. The fire's already started. You're just throwing some more stuff onto it, with the hot list and stuff. You're feeding into, look at how this has gone up 30% the last week. It still has, the trailer hasn't dropped yet. The movie hasn't even come out yet. This thing can go to the moon, So you're causing another group of people potentially, even though you might be very genuine and very data driven and saying like, go do your own research or whatever. But as you and I both know, if you get 1,000 views on that video, there's going to be a certain percentage of those people that, regardless of what you say, are just going eBay, buy it now / best offer. Like, let's go. Regie said,
No, Rob said, don't say Reggie said. But no, there are people that do that. And I think that, like, I spoke to somebody recently and we talked about this idea of pumping your brakes. As a buyer, pump your brakes, slow down, think about what you're doing before you take action so as to not cause the crash or the correction that everyone is predicting. Like, we have some responsibility with every single purchase that we make, and oftentimes with what we sell, and certainly with what we say, we have a little bit of responsibility here. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. For sure.
All right.
I mean,
no, please. Yeah. All right.
No, I was like 100%. Yes, we have a definitely a responsibility not to, to try not to feed into that as much as possible. But like you said, it's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. I buy, when Doug tells me to buy stuff, I buy stuff. It's just, Doug said, that's what I'm gonna start telling my wife. Rob, I want to thank you. Go ahead, brother. Finish your thought.
I just had a quick question for you. So, knowing all this, have you fallen prey to the FOMO purchasing?
Everybody falls prey to FOMO. I think that as I've matured as a collector, I've done a much, much better job of resisting the temptation. And I think when I'm falling into it, I've also taken some precautions that I've outlined in previous videos. I've turned off various alerts so I don't get those alerts on my watch or on my cell phone. I don't watch certain videos. I don't go to certain websites. I try to limit the FOMO, creating type of things to help me to combat it a little bit better. And it's because, and I've done a whole series on emotion. We are human, and humans are emotional, and emotions can get the best of you if not controlled. And so you have to take steps to control those emotions. And one way for me is to not do. Right? That's how I do it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely don't mind when people turn it back around on me. So I'm glad I had a good answer for that one. But Rob, where can people find you online, man?
Northeast Ohio Sports Cards is the YouTube channel. That's the easiest way to pretty much find everything. All my Instagram information is on the description of every video, Twitter, all that stuff. Feel free to reach out with me with any random questions. I would say 6 days a week is sports card content, but I have dedicated Mondays to strictly talking about either comic books or comic book trading cards or something along those lines. And then if something happens, I won't hesitate to pop on and drop something in the middle of the week on it. But I usually do at least one comic book related thing. Usually try not to anger the guard too much with my outside the box thinking.
Well, this, I don't know if I'm old guard at this point or not, but I do appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate you giving a little time here on Wednesday night. Thank you, brother.
No problem. Have a good night.
All right, man. Rob is a good guy. He's a good guy. I enjoy his perspective and his point of view. And I will tell you that the people that subscribe to his channel absolutely love him. They love that guy. They show up and comment on videos anytime this guy is involved. But I do want to go back to my man here. Doug, you were hearing that conversation in the background. What are your initial thoughts about that conversation?
So I love listening to Rob. I think he has a great perspective, is very thoughtful. I completely agree. I think the question you asked, Rob, are the current high values driving a lot of the FOMO and the
or
response.
being driven by. Yeah.
And I agree absolutely. I think that if there was slow, steady, long-term growth, that doesn't get the same reaction from people like me who, part of this is fun. It's a treasure hunt. It's, the speculation side of things is interesting. And the fact that you see some comics jump up tremendously high in value is that hit. You know, it's way more fun to go out and find, you know, if you find a comic worth $2 for $1, okay. If you find a comic worth $50 or $100 for $1, then that gives you that, like, that charge that is fun. And it's that element that makes the speculative side of the hobby interesting.
For certain. And one of the things that people have to think about, you know, if a book is hot and the book, you buy it online for $50, let's say it was a $2 book last week, it's 50 now today. The question is it going to be $100 next week? Like, that's the big question. So if you pay 50 for it today, the only way to really make some money is to have it go up in value in the near term for you to be able to turn around and sell it. And then when you subtract out your shipping fees, your seller fees, your eBay fees, what is your profit margin? Like, if people took a little bit of time to actually think about, okay, I'm buying this because I believe this is going to go up in value. How much higher in value will it actually go for you to have some kind of profit that is meaningful enough for you to tie up your money in this book? I don't know if people take the time to actually think about that versus it's a hot book. It's $50. I've got $50. Let me go ahead and buy it.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the critical thinking skills that you talked about earlier, because if we take more time to think, then maybe we won't give into the FOMO, and maybe we wouldn't see some of the crazy prices that we are seeing right now. I mean, there's that potential. I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn here.
Yeah. And I think that thought process is also not only in analyzing those numbers, but asking yourself, like, what is my end goal with buying this book? Is it to turn around and sell it if it jumps up in value in a month? And if that's the case, then I really need to crunch those numbers. If it's, hey, this is a long-term hold that I think down the road over time will increase a lot, then that's something that's a different thought process. Or just, hey, I've always really wanted this first appearance.
Yeah.
Is it going to be out of my reach a couple months from now? And do I think that's ever going to come back to earth? Because if I don't, then maybe I do pull the trigger, even though the book is kind of jumping now, because I don't see myself being able to get it for less in the next, 5 years. So I'm going to make that call. But it's thinking through all of those things, and not just listening to the people telling you that it's hot right now and you need to get it before you can't anymore. And I thought one point that Rob made that was really, really smart was about kind of vetting who it is that you're listening to. We like, for me personally, a lot of my retirement is invested in the stock market. I'm not a stock analyst or an expert, but I've got a guy, my financial planner, Edward Jones.
And there you go. Tim's my man.
Exactly. But we vetted them, they have degrees in this. They're hired by a good organization. We've had recommendations from people probably before we went with that person. And that process, if we're not experts, we kind of want to apply that vetting process to who we're listening to about how we spend money, especially if we're doing it from more an investment standpoint or a speculative standpoint. Is it, just someone who's bored with a mic and wanting to tell you all about the books they have because they want the value to go up? Or is it someone who's, an overstreet advisor or has been in the business or the field for many years? What is their thought process behind it? So taking the time to actually not just watch the different hot lists, but think about, well, who are they coming from and where's their expertise lie before I run out and click that buy now button or best offer button on eBay.
That's legit. I mean, because it is very, very easy to spend money. Very easy to It's a little harder to actually make that money, you know? And again, man, as someone that just sent a wire just the other day that just hurt my heart, you know, it's just like my bank account went and it just made me uncomfortable. And it's just, I don't think that you can outsource responsibility. I think that we have to, as buyers, have some responsibility to vet and to evaluate and to scrutinize the decisions before we take those steps. I think we as content creators, right? I'm including you as someone that comes on this show often, as someone that creates blog posts, and certainly Rob, Neo. We're all content creators and we all have a responsibility, I think, to try to put out the best possible information that we can put out that is not misleading, that is as transparent as possible, because we don't know how people are going to interpret it. But then people also have to have some responsibility as well. And that is part of why we are having this conversation. Again, not to criticize anyone that creates a hot list or a hot video or whatever it happens to be. It's more like, we all care about this community and we want the community to be here. And we don't want to see people hurt. And as part of that, we have to do stuff like this to educate people, to say, look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? There's maybe marketplace manipulation, which was last week's conversation. And this week is, hey, you might need to pump your brakes and not just get caught up in the FOMO and hit the buy now button. Is there anything, as we get ready to wrap up here, is there anything that you would add to that as we close out?
I think the personal responsibility aspect is important. And one of the things I love about your show is that you do talk about finances from a thoughtful, not I spent X amount of money and I have all these wildly valuable books. That stuff is fun. But you talk about, you know, buying within your means, making thoughtful decisions, you know, having some form of budgeting process or thoughtful decision-making process before you just buy things. And, you know, if that's that personal responsibility that I think you take on well, yep, as someone who creates content. You obviously care that when you put out information, you want people to think through how that will impact them beyond the instant gratification of, yay, I bought this.
I got it. Yeah. And I mean, I make mistakes. And when I make mistakes, honestly, they bother me. I sit and think about them for a while, you know, and it's like, I make mistakes. It happens. I don't like it. It does really bother me, but I do some of this stuff, honestly, because I actually do care, you know, plus it's also fun. It's not just completely altruistic, right? I have fun doing this stuff. I have fun interacting and having conversations with folks. So, Doug, as we get to wrap up here, brother, where can people find you on the intranets?
On Instagram at Doug.Bratton, BRATTON.9, and doing a blog on RegieCollects.com. And if I could give a shout out, anybody in New Jersey area, Dave and I are doing our comics garage sale this coming Sunday. So if you're around, come by and say hi.
Be clear, that is not GarageCon. GarageCon is copyrighted by Regie Collects.
That's right.
But I did share your post the other day, and I know at least one person reached out to you that's going to try to come. Yeah. But that your garage sale is going down this weekend. Hit him up on the Instagram machine for the address and all that kind of stuff. Go by, meet this guy. I honestly can't wait. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, I honestly can't wait to meet you, because I dig you as a person, which is why I always have you on. But I'm actually looking forward to like being in the same room and like actually, you know, meeting you. I think that'll be cool.
It's going to happen when you have your first GarageCon in your new home. It's a lot closer for me in the Carolinas than California.
Brother, you know what? I respect that. I respect that response. So hopefully soon enough, we will be able to make that magic happen. All right. Take care.
You too.
I enjoy that guy. All right. So as we get ready to wrap up here, I do want to give a quick nod to Sunset Comics. Sunset Comics is a store that I spoke about on Sunday's show. They actually have a signing event that is coming up. But what's really cool about this is that they are a post-pandemic brand new comic shop on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood here in California. So I'm excited to hear that a LCS is actually opening up when we've heard about some closing and some not necessarily coming back. To see one actually open up in this post-pandemic period, I think is a really good thing. The store is officially opening June 1st. But before that, they are actually doing a signing event on May 16th from 1 to 6 o'clock on the X Corp issue number 1. And I think X Corp issue number 1 has already come out. They have a wonderful variant that is out. It is a trade dress, a virgin, and a sketch cover variant that is produced by Todd Knock. And unfortunately, I do not have that loaded up here on screen, but it is a really awesome variant. You can actually see it on sunsetcomics.com, and that's COMIX.com, comics with an X.com. And if you enter the promo code Regie Collects, you can actually save 10% on your entire order, which includes, of course, this new variant that they have coming out, but they are also putting up some back issue comics as well. So Sunset Comics with an .com, 10% off, RegieCollects.com. Shout out to those guys. They actually have the X Corp 1 that is out. That is going to be signed by Todd, Raw and Blue Label and Yellow Label. But then they also have another variant coming out in July, a Bounty Hunters issue number 1 that's also going to be dropping as well. All right. Let me go back to the chat real quick. A couple of people talking about trading Turoks. I don't know that anybody wants to trade a Turok, and I can tell you my chat has frozen up a while ago, so I'm not able to actually see anything that is happening in the chat right now. So let me see if that unfroze it, and it did not. Let me try one more time before I wrap up here. I want to at least see some of the comments that are popping in, if I'm able to get that to work. And let's see if we remove it that way. And let's see, it is, there we go. It actually unfroze. There we go. All right, so cool. I'm actually able to see you guys. Scrolling through some of the comments here. 2021. Thank you, brother. Definitely appreciate that. Appreciate you coming by. Those guys are smart guys, man. And I definitely appreciate them coming by. Thank you very much for the kind words. I actually appreciate you guys. Post-pandemic does indeed sound like a good thing. It seems like the world is starting to slowly open up just a little bit here. So the last thing I want to do is to give you guys a reminder that there is a really awesome book that is being given away by Go Collect. They put me in a position every single week to give away a really awesome book. This week's book is this one right here. It is Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, issue number 134. This is the first appearance of Darkseid in cameo. This is this week's giveaway book, and you can win it simply by watching the videos that are coming out from the channel this week. And in one of those videos is a phrase embedded into it. You capture that phrase, you head over to the community tab, which is here on YouTube. You find the post where I'm talking about that book. You click it, you go to MailChimp, you plug in 3 pieces of information, and then you tune in to the Ready, Set, Go preview show. As a reminder, you have to watch the show within 1 week of it coming out to claim your prize if you are the winner. I do not track winners down. So you don't have to be present to win, but you do have to claim your prize within 1 week of Sunday's show, or else it goes to the next person. All books that were supposed to be given away have been given away at this point. The only book we have is Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, issue number 134, book that I really wanted, that I bought, and I'm now going to give away to you guys. Shout out to Go Collect again for hooking me up week after week to be able to do this cool stuff. All right. With that said, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me a little bit. I hope that you guys enjoyed this conversation as we examined whether hot lists are still relevant and why they're relevant and for whom. Both guests did a fantastic job of providing us with some insight. And again, I hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation. As always, if you need to reach out to me for any reason at all, don't hesitate to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.